Hello everybody, my name is Grace and this is Totally Creative. If you're new to the channel, welcome, please subscribe, and if you're returning, thank you guys so much. Today we're going to be doing a review of these Koi Watercolors Pocket Field Sketchbox by Sakura Watercolor Products. The first thing I'm going to do is open the box up and talk about the palette itself a little bit. When you open it, you see that the plastic is nice and smooth. It's got a nice glossy look to it, and it is a little bit big. It's just a bit smaller than my hand. The Sakura kit is very durable and is great for travel. In fact, that's exactly what this is for. You see here on the bottom there is a finger hole, so you can stick your thumb there if you want to stand up and paint, or your index finger, whatever. You can stand up or just move around with it in your hand without it slipping around. Once you open the box, you see the palette, which has 5 squares, which are conveniently placed for mixing. There are little holes in the inside where you put the palette. As you can see here, it pops out easy, and then you put these little pegs into each little peg slot, and you can move it around to wherever you're most comfortable having your palette. The next thing I want to talk about is this little piece back here. It can be used as an easel for painting, and you put a small card in there, as in a watercolor square or rectangle, whatever. You can put some watercolor paper back there and use it as a stand, or you can put your palette there if you don't need that extra room. And then a third option is using that extra space for mixing. As you see here, they come with 2 sponges, which are nice, convenient. It's just part of the package. This kit definitely comes with everything you need and checks off all the boxes. You have somewhere to wipe your brush, you have a brush, you have paints, you have a palette, and you have a place to put your paper. And one of the things that I really liked about this is you can put the palette on the last 2 pegs so that you can access both of the little sponges. Now I'm showing you the brush tip real quick. This brush tip is a little bit unique. You have to screw it on counterclockwise, and one thing about it that kind of annoys me is that if you don't screw it on tight enough, it will squirt out the edges, which is a little bit annoying. So just make sure that it's on. You can test it to make sure it won't squirt everywhere and that it's secure. Once you screw it on, you can squeeze the barrel, and that shoots water into these bristles right here, which are not made out of animal hair. It's fully synthetic, as you might have guessed. It comes with a nice little top that secures any dripping, and the little piece that stops the water from flowing out goes into the barrel when you're traveling. Now I'd like to talk about the paints themselves. They are nice and hard. I don't know if that's a good quality, but they are hard, and the texture, if you rub your finger on it, is like finished wood. So they're not glossy like some of the other paints. I prefer the glossy because you know it's easy to re-wet, but these paints actually didn't give me that much trouble. The pigment did come up out of the little square very easy. The next thing I want to talk about is my swatch card here. I've made a thick black line for the white to test the opaqueness, because the white is the most opaque, well, usually the most opaque color in the palette, so I did do a thick line there if you're wondering what that is. I have all the little squares with the names of each paint and a small line to see the opaqueness, and we're going to dive right in and do these swatch cards. I'm re-wetting all of these paints by putting a little droplet of water on each one, which is convenient and a good way to re-wet stuff, but also you can just spray it. The thing that I found out about using droplets to wet these paints was that on some of the colors, like the darker blues, it left a little canyon. And when I say canyon, I mean it cracked and left a little deep hole. I don't show that in this video, but later, a couple days later, it started to develop this ugly little cringy hole on 149 right there. But other than that, this process of dripping the water on there is totally fine and works great for me. The Sakura watercolors are very smooth when you're applying them, but they are a little bit uneven with this particular brush. I'm putting some tape so that it won't curl up on the edges and it'll stay down. When I say that it's not even when you apply it with this brush particularly, it's because you cannot control the amount of water that is dispersed from the brush. As in most watercolor brushes, it's really hard to lay down a paint and control the water to your liking. It's just something that happens with all watercolor brushes. It's just very, very hard to control the amount of water dispersed. I ran into a little problem when I got to these three colors right here, because when you laid them down, they did not come back up. You could not get them to come out or lift from this paper to save your life. And I don't think it's going to change from paper to paper, because the moment I laid it down, it was there. I tried to have a gradient wash, but as you can see for the beryllium hue, it didn't really want to do that. As well as the cadmium red hue, you can see a harsh line where the pigment was laid down and then another connecting line where the water was put down to make that wash. Moving on to the greens and blues, they turned out really vibrant, which I enjoyed. And one of the colors that I really, really liked was the olive green. The reason I like this so much is because it is such a nice and agreeable color. It went very, very nicely with the roses that I like to paint. I have a little color palette that I always use when I paint roses, and this was such a nice addition to that because olive green always looks nice with pink. I want to zoom in real quick and show you this red because it's very, very granulated. I think the granulation comes from not having enough time to dissolve into the water, which I did a little bit of experimenting later and found out that was the case. So to avoid granulation like that with that light red color in particular, all you have to do is mix it up on the palette and mix it really well, and that will get rid of any of the granulation that pops up. The granulation did appear in some of the colors when I looked at it more closely, but to avoid that, like I said, just give it some time to dissolve. That's the only downfall I had of these paints. Next, I'm doing a little punch buggy in an adorable yellow color because yellow was my favorite out of this packet, and I'm just going ahead and using some browns, blacks, yellows, greens, and blues. I decided to use my own brush for this because I have problems with watercolor brushes, in particular that have water in the barrels. Like I said, because the water is really hard to control, so I just decided to do it with my own brush. If you want to know any of the things that I used in this video, go to the description and they will be linked there. So if you have any questions, go there before you ask them, because it might be answered there. As you see here, I have this finished piece, which I really enjoyed, and this is the swatch card, which turned out really beautiful, and it's great for references, and it will fit right into the packet, the pocket box. If you don't want to occupy the space inside of the box, you can just tape it or Velcro it to the back, and if you don't need it on you, you can just leave it wherever in your studio for reference later. The water brush itself was very easy to break down and put back in the palette. The cards that I used inside the easel area were 4 inches by 6 inches. You cannot go larger than that, but you can have something smaller than that. I recommend putting tape on the back to hold it down and help the fringe. All together, these paints are a great student quality paint, which is very nicely packaged. This is my favorite travel kit so far that I've found, and the box itself is what makes it so special. The extra room for mixing, all the paints, the colors, the brush, everything fits so nicely together. I give the Sequoia Pocket Field Sketch Box a thumbs up. Thank you guys for watching, and until next time, bye.